This week on Vaticano, Pope Francis publishes a new Motu Proprio to further financial reforms. Caritas Internationalis launches a new campaign for peace in Syria. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI celebrates the 65th anniversary of his priesthood. And we learn more about one of Europe's patron saints. This and more here on Vaticano.
Despite being on vacation, Pope Francis keeps working from his apartment in the Santa Marta residence. And although he has reduced his public appearances, he has not cancelled his appointment on Sunday in St. Peter's Square. Accordingly, on July 10th, he gave his usual Angelus prayer in front of the thousands of faithful assembled in the square. During his address, the Pope reflected on the parable of the Good Samaritan, inviting us to get out of ourselves and to be ready to meet the other, our neighbor. He also reminded us that at the end of time, we will all be judged based on how much we loved.
E mediante le opere buone che compiamo con amore e con gioia verso il prossimo.
From the good works that we do with love and joy to others, our faith germinates and bears fruit. Let us ask ourselves, each responding in his heart, let us ask ourselves, is our faith fruitful? Does our faith produce good works? Or is it rather sterile and therefore more dead than alive? Are the ones who select people according to their own pleasure? It's good to ask ourselves these questions, and often, because in the end we will be judged on the works of mercy. The Lord will say to us, but you remember that time on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho? That man was me, half dead. Do you remember? That hungry child was me. Do you remember? The migrant who many want to drive out, it was me. Those grandparents alone, abandoned in nursing homes, it was me. That sick person only in the hospital, no one goes to see, that was me.
At the conclusion of the Angelus, Pope Francis said goodbye to the faithful and gave his special regards to those who make their living at sea.
Oggi ricorre la Domenica del Mare.
Today is Sea Sunday in support of the pastoral care of seafarers. I encourage seafarers and fishermen in their work, often hard and risky, as well as the chaplains and volunteers in their valuable service. Mary, Star of the Sea, watch over you.
Maria, Stella del Mare, vegli su di voi.
On July 9th, another important event monopolized the attention of the media, the publication of an apostolic letter in the form of a Motu Proprio entitled Our Temporal Assets. With this document, Pope Francis spells out the clear distinction between, on the one hand, the administration of the patrimony of the Holy See, and, on the other hand, the control and vigilance over it. The Holy Father starts off by underlining that the temporal assets owned by the Church must be used in order to pursue its objectives. And this means the divine worship, a fair, honest salary for the clergy, the apostolic mission, and, above all, our charitable work. A Motu Proprio is a document born of the personal will of the pontiff, and that has not been suggested by any part of the Roman Curia. A group of 200 French pilgrims, including poor, disabled, and homeless people, came to the Vatican for the audience with Pope Francis on July 6th. The Pope warmly welcomed the pilgrims, calling them, as the first deacon of Rome, St. Lawrence, did, the treasures of the Church.
Sono molto lieto di accogliervi.
I am delighted to welcome you. Whatever your state, your story, or burden might be, it is Jesus who brings us together around himself.
The group was led by Cardinal Philippe Barberin and the Sapel community on the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the birth of Father Joseph Rzyński. The father founded the ATD, All Together in Dignity, Fourth World International Movement. This movement aims at fighting chronic poverty by helping people who live in extremely poor conditions across the globe. The Holy Father thanked the pilgrims for their visit and said that they give a beautiful testimony of evangelical fraternity in walking together on the pilgrimage.
You have indeed come accompanying one another. The caregivers have generously helped you. By providing resources and time to enable you to come, and by giving to them, you give to us, you give to me, Jesus himself.
Donando me Gesù stesso.
In the end, Pope Francis gave a special mission to the participants, which is to pray for those who are responsible for poverty so that they might convert. And he said, I assure you that if you do this, there will be great joy in the Church, in your hearts, and in beloved France as well.
On July 11th, the Catholic Church celebrates Saint Benedict of Norcia, the father of Western monasticism and the patron saint of Europe since 1964. It was Blessed Paul VI who proclaimed Benedict the patron saint of the Old Continent with the apostolic letter Pacis Nuncius, in light of the impulse that Benedict gave to the union of the European peoples, to the ordination of Christian Europe, and to its spiritual unity. Today, while Europe seems to be disintegrating, the saint himself and his message are more necessary than ever. It is no coincidence that during his 3 years as pontiff, Pope Francis has remembered on numerous occasions how important it is not to forget the Christian roots that are the foundations of the spirit of a united Europe. In front of the European Parliament in 2014, the Pope invited the member states to look at their Christian heritage as a positive resource and not as a limit.
In questo senso, ritengo fondamentale.
I consider to be fundamental not only the legacy that Christianity has offered in the past to the social and cultural formation of the continent, but above all the contribution which it desires to offer today and in the future to Europe's growth. This contribution does not represent a threat to the secularity of states or to the independence of the institutions of the European Union, but rather an enrichment. This is clear from the ideals which shaped Europe from the beginning, such as peace, subsidiarity, and reciprocal solidarity, and a humanism centered on respect for the dignity of the human person.
Un umanismo incentrato sul rispetto della dignità della persona.
He warned that only if the European countries continue to be united under these spiritual, moral, and humanistic values, they then will be able to fight against ideological and religious extremisms that are seeping in through its borders.
Parimenti sono convinto.
A Europe which is capable of appreciating its religious roots and of grasping their fruitfulness and potential will be all the more immune to the many forms of extremism spreading in the world today, not least as a result of the great vacuum of ideals which we are currently witnessing in the West, since it is precisely man's forgetfulness of God and his failure to give him glory which gives rise to violence.
Di Dio e non la sua glorificazione a generare la violenza.
Last June, the United Kingdom left the European Union, and the idea of a united Europe seems to be crumbling away. 2 years before this crisis, Pope Francis had seemed to foresee a rupture among the member states and in front of the European Council stated his vision for old Europe.
Il mio augurio.
My hope is that Europe, by rediscovering the legacy of its history and the depth of its roots, and by embracing its lively multipolarity and the phenomenon of a transversality and dialogue, will rediscover the youthfulness of spirit which has made this continent fruitful and great.
Spirito che l'ha resa feconda e grande. Grazie.
A united Europe born of the intuition of Saint Benedict of Norcia, a 6th century monk known as a messenger of peace, teacher of civilization, and herald of the religion of Christ in the West.
Thanks for watching. Stick around for more on Vaticano. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano.
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is probably the world's most intractable conflict, with the occupation of Palestine that began in 1967 and an ongoing search and struggle for peace solutions.
What America and the international community can do is to state frankly what everyone knows. A lasting peace will involve 2 states for 2 peoples. Israel as a Jewish state and the homeland for the Jewish people, and the state of Palestine as the homeland for the Palestinian people, each state enjoying self-determination, mutual recognition, and peace.
On June 29th this year, The United Nations International Conference in support of Israeli-Palestinian peace opened here at the UN in Geneva.
We are here to really bring back peace to track. Palestinian leadership is fully in support with the French initiative. We're trying to reactivate the whole track. We're hoping that there will be a serious paradigm shift from bilateral talks to multilateral talks.
In 2014, Pope Francis visited Bethlehem in support of peace. Later that year, he hosted a joint prayer meeting at the Vatican with Israeli and Palestinian leaders.
Pope Francis is a genuine man, is a holy man, is a man who loves peace and justice. He has the authority, he has the religious authority, he has the moral authority, and he believes in peace and justice. And I think he can really contribute to this in the best shape possible. And we hope that he will activate his role as a person, as a head of the church, and as an international peace lover as well.
The conference participants welcomed the recent Arab Peace Initiative and French Initiative and agreed that peace was indeed possible, negotiated under the umbrella of the international community.
I think without a pivotal role for the United Nations and the international community, peace is not possible. Talk about two states, one state is there, and it occupies the potential land of the other state. And without ending that occupation, there can be a no-state solution.
In their intervention during the conference, the Holy See recalled what Pope Francis had affirmed in Bethlehem.
The time has come to everyone to find the courage and be generous and creative in the service of the common good. The courage to forge a peace which rests on the acknowledgement by all of the right of two states to exist and to live in peace and security within internationally recognized borders.
In the bull of benediction of the extraordinary Jubilee year, Pope Francis has invited all Christians to reflect on the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. The body, like the soul, needs our special attention because the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. In the middle of June in Rome, about 1,000 people received a free checkup and basic health care, all free of charge. This is part of the Jubilee for those who were ill and for people with disabilities. The MedTag Foundation, together with its partners and the Pontifical Council for the New Evangelization, set up a sort of open-air hospital for 3 days in front of the 4 papal basilicas in Rome. Sabina Colombo, the Vice President of Strategy and Business Development for MedTag Foundation, said that this event was a perfect moment to launch the foundation.
We are an engineering company, so we provide medical simulation training all over the world. Through humanoid robotic systems. And the MedTag Foundation, which is the MedTag Science for Life Foundation, has been created to create and develop many projects like this one.
About 350 volunteers, religious men, Red Cross nurses, military staff, and healthcare workers were involved in offering free tests to over 1,000 people in the fields of general medicine, dermatology, oncology, pediatrics, and gynecology.
Pope Francis has decided to have this Jubilee of Mercy, so all the events organized in the Jubilee are for the mercifulness of the pilgrim and of the whole world. And his wish was to create events that were very close to the people.
Dr. Raphael Landolfi, scientific coordinator of the initiative, said that homeless people are the most vulnerable and in need of medical care. Therefore, all doctors paid special attention to them.
These people have a number of needs. They are not so careful about prevention, about their health. So we offer the opportunity to have a full prevention for female neoplasm, for skin neoplasm, and early detection of chronic disease, respiratory disease, diabetes, hypertension. All these things is provided for free.
The harsh Roman sun and lack of water became the main threat for pilgrims coming to Rome this summer.
We just provided emergency for people feeling dizziness and low blood pressure in the square. Now she's a Spanish woman, she's received fluid therapy and so on.
The patients who were found to have more serious diseases were offered a follow-up treatment.
People having a serious disease, we will refer these people to the hospital. They will be called by the hospital, by the Gemelli Hospital generally, for undergo surgery where they need, if they need. Other people will be referred to ambulatory medicine of Caritas or Sant'Egidio maybe, or Gemelli.
These health points are the first initiative of the MedTag Foundation, but not its last. This autumn, Rome will witness a much bigger event.
Pope Francis liked it so much that through Monsignor Fisichella, His Excellency, has asked us to do the same in November. So in November, we will have a big structure. We have still to decide where here in Rome, and we will receive over 6,000 homeless from all over Europe. So it's going to be a very strong event for the sick, for the homeless.
During his meeting in May this year with Pope Francis, the Grand Imam spoke about why terrorism should be detestable to Muslims who correctly interpret Muslim texts, and that he is communicating that to young people. Muslims have lived for decades as citizens in harmony with followers of other religions as well as with non-believers, and contributing to the wealth of their countries of residence. They are now targeted not by virtue of their deeds, but by their identity.
The issue of radicalization is the most challenging issue that faces, the whole world at this point. And the whole international community has to deal with it.
In conjunction with the UN Human Rights Council in June, this side event was held at the UN Geneva, focusing on preventive measures set forth in the UN Global Counter-Strategy. There is a need for urgent action, collective action, and long-term measures. There's also work to promote the values of tolerance, dialogue, and coexistence. The panel's theme, de-radicalization, or the rollback of extremist violence, a follow-up to the UN Secretary-General's plan of action to prevent violent extremism.
What we have to do is to show that this version of Islam is antagonistic towards democracy, antagonistic towards living together in peace, and it cannot be accepted as such.
The panelists reiterated the view already expressed by many international leaders that violent extremism or terrorism cannot and should not be associated with any religion, nationality, civilization or ethnic group. When we say radical, radicalization, radical nature, we haven't said violence, not yet. We haven't pronounced the word violence, because there can be deeply pacifist radical behavior. The only answer to respond to radical extremism, radical violence, is non-violent counter-radicalism. The most notable Catholic radicals are Dorothy Day, of the Catholic Worker Movement, and Thomas Merton, the Trappist monk, both dedicated to non-violent principles.
The important thing is, religion is something which is proper for anybody to hold. Terrorism is an evil that has to be combated, even if it tries to dress up in a religious garb, makes no difference.
In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. More on Vaticano begins now.
On June 29th, the feast of Saints Peter and Paul, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI celebrated the 65th anniversary of his priestly ordination. Words of affection and recognition for his unswavering loyalty to the Church of Christ came from a group of cardinals and from Pope Francis himself. At the end of the event, Benedict XVI thanked them for their kind words.
Santo Padre, cari fratelli.
Holy Father, dear brothers, 65 years ago, my brother ordained with me decided to write on the memorial card for the first Mass only one word in Greek, Ευχαριστομόνον. Let us give thanks. I am convinced that with this word, in its many dimensions, all that one can say in this moment has already been said. In this word, there is all that there is to say. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Holy Father. Your goodness from the first day of your election, every day of my life here moves me interiorly, brings me inwardly more than the Vatican gardens. Your goodness is a place in which I feel protected. I hope that you will be able to move forward with all of us on this path of divine mercy, showing the Jesus path to God.
Di Gesù al Gesù a Dio.
During his papacy, Benedict XVI would repeat on numerous occasions that the day he was ordained was the most important day of his life.
Nella festa dei Santi Pietro e Paolo.
On the feast of St. Peter and Paul in 1951, as I faced this task, when we were lying prostrate on the floor of the Cathedral of Freising, we were more than 40 companions, and above us all the saints were invoked. I was troubled by an awareness of the poverty of my life. Yes, it was a consolation that the protection of God's saints, of the living and the dead, was invoked upon us. I knew that I would not be left on my own.
Sapevo che non sarei rimasto solo.
The extraordinary chance of being a priest will be a recurring theme of all his years as Pope. In fact, on June 19, 2009, he proclaimed a year for priests to honor with devotion and admiration the huge gift represented by priests, not only for the Church, but for humanity as a whole.
The priest is not a mere office holder, like those which every society needs in order to carry out certain functions. Instead, he does something which no human being can do of his own power. In Christ's name, he speaks the words which absolve us of our sins. And in this way, he changes, starting with God, our entire life. Over the offerings of bread and wine, he speaks Christ's words of thanksgiving, which are words of transubstantiation, words which make Christ himself present, the risen one, his body and blood, words which thus transform the elements of the world, which open the world to God and unite it to him. The priesthood, then, is not simply office, but sacrament. God makes use of us poor men in order to be, through us, present to all men and women and to act on their behalf. This audacity of God, who entrusts himself to human beings, who, conscious of our weakness, nonetheless considers men capable of acting and being present in his stead, this audacity of God is the true grandeur concealed in the word priesthood.
Che si nasconde nella parola sacerdozio.
A yes to Christ, the yes of the young Joseph Ratzinger, a yes that has stayed with him all through his life. Pope Francis is encouraging all people to promote a peaceful political solution in the Syrian conflict. He recently released a video message to support Peace is Possible, a campaign launched by Caritas Internationalis.
Today I want to speak to you about something that saddens my heart a lot, the war in Syria, now in its 5th year.
The pontiff says that the Syrian people are living through unspeakable suffering and are forced to endure constant attacks and bombs and to leave their homes in order to survive, while some countries profit from the conflict.
Mentre il popolo soffre incredibili quantità di denaro.
While the people suffer, incredible quantities of money are being spent to supply weapons to fighters. And some of the countries supplying these arms are also among those that talk of peace. How can you believe in someone who caresses you with the right hand and strikes you with the left hand?
E con la sinistra ti colpisce.
Despite the difficult situation, Pope Francis is encouraging young and old and all people of goodwill to build a more just society and live the Holy Year of Mercy enthusiastically. He said that the conflict wouldn't last long if people could unite for peace.
La pace in Syria.
Peace in Syria is possible.
The Holy Father has invited prayers for peace in Syria personally, in parishes and communities, so that the message of peace, unity, and hope can spread worldwide. The Pontiff said that the work of peace must follow prayer.
Vi invito a rivolgervi a coloro I quali sono
I invite you to call on those who are involved in peace negotiations to take these agreements seriously and to make every effort to facilitate access to humanitarian aid.
ad agevolare l'accesso agli aiuti umanitari.
One concrete action could be participating in the Caritas International campaign, Peace is Possible. The initiative launched its own website, www.peaceispossible.cc, where each person is called to participate in the promotion of peace. The aim of the campaign is to build a coalition of like-minded people from all sectors of society that are committed to the purpose of peace.
Tutti devono riconoscere che
Everyone has to recognize that there is no military solution for Syria, but only a political solution. The international community must, therefore, support the peace talks heading towards the construction of a government of national unity.
verso la costruzione di un governo di unità nazionale.